Okay, guys, I think we are on Q&A. Son of a mother duck, Lucy. I think we are on Q&A number 7 here. I'm going to catch the UFC fights, so I'm going to make this a little quicker. Only do 7 questions. Paulo Costa is fighting tonight, and Nate Diaz. Those are the main people I want to see. Number 1. Can you talk a little bit about your late teens, early 20s, where you've talked a little bit about how you dealt with loneliness and struggling with girls, and dealt with it by raging in the gym and the me against the world mentality? That is from M98. So yeah, basically all through my teenage years and even like my first couple years in my 20s, I was a big loner. And it was really by choice. All through high school, I didn't really have any close friends. I didn't hang out with anybody after school. I didn't party. I didn't drink. I had my first beer when I was 20 years old at my house with my parents' supervision. So it was like I wasn't a person to go out and do all that stuff. And I just felt like an outcast. I felt like I wasn't like anybody else. I felt like everybody was out partying. Everybody was out getting drunk. And I had no interest in that. You know, it just wasn't my thing. I just wanted to be somebody. I wanted to make something of myself. And lifting was my outlet. Lifting was my passion. So I figured that's where I would do it. That's where I would become known and accomplish things and become as strong as I could possibly be. So I talked about this before. Like when YouTube first started in 2008, I think I got on there. Or 2009, I started getting on there. It was still new and there wasn't a whole lot of lifting footage out there. So I'd go on there and I saw nobody was deadlifting what I was deadlifting. So I just started putting videos up and they started catching on. My bench and stuff like that, people weren't really interested in that, but my deadlift was pretty good. So that's how that all started. And after school, I'd go home, I'd eat, I'd take my pre-workout, I'd head down into the basement, and I'd start knocking the weights out, you know. And Friday night and Saturday night, it became almost a ritual where it was like, I knew what I'd be doing, you know, at 10 p.m. that night. I'd be killing weights. And it was like, I had this mentality almost like, I'm better than these people because they're out getting drunk and I'm making something of myself. So I definitely had a chip on my shoulder. And I wasn't popular. No, nobody, you know, hung out with me like I said. So I felt like this kid who I couldn't get any girls. First girlfriend I had when I was 19. So think about that. Before 19, I hadn't even kissed a girl, to put this into perspective. And I used to be a kid who I was 150 pounds at 6 feet tall. And through lifting, I naturally brought myself up to 230, naturally. And then nowadays I stay around 245, 250. So it just was one of those things. It's like, I'm going to make something of myself. I'm going to get a killer physique. I'm going to become super strong. I'm going to improve my confidence. And it really did. Like lifting improved my confidence tremendously. Opened so many doors for me. Gave me the life I have today. And so it really blossomed from what I imagined. This is what I wanted all along. This is what I envisioned. So it all kind of, it became my reality. It's all happened exactly as I planned. So that's really cool to look back on. And now like public speaking, interacting with people, all that stuff, it's not a problem. The confidence lifting gives you and the strength and all that, it makes your life so much better. So I really owe a lot to this and I love it. I love what I do. I love lifting heavy. I love always getting stronger. And there's so many peaks and valleys nowadays. It's like, it's never a continuous path. Like it's always up and down, which is why you see a lot of lifters flame out. Because they have that up period and they're killing it and they feel awesome. And then they hit those rough patches, whether it's injuries or bad meets or they hit a plateau. And then they kind of fizzle out. So it's just been awesome to stay in the game and just keep grinding away. You know, not every meet's my best meet. Not every meet goes according to plan. Injuries crop up, but I keep fighting. I keep coming back, so I love it. Number 2, if you were natural, would your training look the same? And what weight class do you think you'd compete in? From Jared Mulligan. So, if I was natural, I'd hands down be at 220. Alice, no. So when I was on just a little bit of test, I was competing at 220. And then obviously I said when I was natural, the heaviest I got was 230, but I wasn't like shredded. I was still pretty lean, but I wasn't as lean as I am now. So it makes perfect sense that if I was natural, I'd be in that 220 class. And then if I was USAPL, IPF, I'd be 105 kg, 231 and under. So that's an easy call there. If I was natural, though, my training would look the same. I don't believe training structure changes from whether you're natural or enhanced. Rather, it's just the amount of progression you can make. So obviously guys who are going into meets, blasting gear, are going to be able to progress at a much faster pace and have a much better peak than guys who are natural. But I think the training principles still apply, whether you're natural or not. I think the training is pretty much, it can work for anybody, no matter what method you use. It's just that rate of progression is different. And even if you're, let's put another thing into perspective. You could be a natural athlete and you could be an enhanced athlete, but you're still going to accumulate fatigue. So it's like, even if you're enhanced and your muscles can recover much faster than a natural athlete, the limiting factor is still going to be the nervous system can't keep up. You're still going to accumulate fatigue and you're going to be drained. So it's almost like as you get stronger, you accumulate more fatigue. That becomes a bigger hang up. And you can't out-train the fatigue. So yeah, my muscles, I could literally hit them every other day, but the fatigue would get to be way too much to where the training wasn't productive. So that's a hang-up you see as you get stronger. And if you think about it, like somebody pulling a 900-pound deadlift compared to somebody pulling a 500-pound deadlift, it's not even close as far as the amount of fatigue they accumulate, even though it's all relative. So a 500-pound max isn't going to take anywhere near as much out of you as a 900-pound max. That's a principle you got to think about. Chad Wesley Smith talks about this. Number 3, thoughts on Tom Martin and his coaching of Cailer and getting Cailer up to a 900-pound conventional deadlift, from Nick 618. So yeah, apparently Cailer worked for about 3 years now, if I'm not mistaken, with Jesse Burdick, who is an excellent coach. Jesse Burdick preaches conjugate method, and it works. I worked with him for a short period of time, and it was successful. So he knows what he's doing, and that conjugate approach, obviously, it got Cailer up to a 950 freaking deadlift in competition. But I think Cailer just wanted to try something different. So he's with Tom Martin for probably the last few months now, last 3-4. And Tom's having him do a lot of conventional work. And anybody who's worked with me knows that I think the best way to get your sumo deadlift up is to get a bigger conventional. So I have a lot of my sumo pullers hit conventional hard, and it translates extremely well. So Cailer now has pulled 920 conventional off blocks and 860 off the floor. So his conventional is blowing up, which is likely to translate very well to his sumo pull. The one thing you'll see with Tom Martin's coaching, with his programming, he does really heavy singles on a nearly weekly basis. So like 1 week he'll do from the floor, the next week he'll do block pulls. Even you'll see heavy squat singles. So it works. It seems to be working very well. The one thing I wonder about is the accumulation of fatigue, like we just talked about. I know if I pull a deadlift of like 800 pounds or a set like that, it taxes me so much and I'm exhausted for the whole week. So it's kind of crazy that they're able to do that every single week. But it obviously works for them, so I'm not questioning it. Number 4, what are your thoughts on Kevin Oak's new world record total in the 242 class? So I congratulated Kevin on my Instagram. I have no bad blood with him. And I was just happy to see somebody break the record after 2 years, because this has been a long-standing record. Larry Wheels broke the record 2 years ago. And in this day and age of powerlifting's growth, you don't see records hold up that long anymore. So to see someone come along and break that, I'm really happy for him. Another guy to keep an eye on is Andrew Herbert, is competing in 2 weeks at Boss of Bosses, and he's putting up numbers that I've never seen from him before. So I know he's probably chomping at the bit to take a shot at that record as well. And Andrew Herbert and Kevin Oak are going to be battling for that, so keep an eye on that. Really strong lifter, great dude, both of them. Also, what are your thoughts on John Haack's world record Wilks? That's from Coolguy with the Coolcar. John Haack, used to train with him. I've talked about him extensively on here, so I'm not going to get into that kind of stuff. But his Wilks now is 609 or 610. raw, which is the highest raw Wilks ever, not counting knee wraps, by far. So Eric Lillibridge held the record for probably the last half a decade with a 600 Wilks in sleeves. And Haack came along and obliterated that with a 610 Wilks, and he's got more in the tank. So it's, who knows what this guy's gonna do. It's crazy, very impressive. Number 5, what was your first reaction of hearing of KK's death? Konstantin Konstantinov's, the great Russian deadlifter who pulled 939. I've heard you speak about being a big fan of his early on and speaking with him over messages once. That's from Nick618. Oh, he's got 2 questions in here. Well, that's impressive work, buddy. So KK actually messaged me a few years ago with some very interesting stuff on Instagram and told me he was a fan. And there's certain things that were said that I cannot say, but it was interesting. Let's put it that way. So I know that's teasing you guys, but I can't get into it for real. Lucy, you're really distracting me, Chief. Go. So, KK, awesome deadlifter. I'm really distracted by the dogs right now, and I can't even concentrate. I was shocked though. KK was like 40 years old when he died, just super young, and I think there's still questions about how he exactly died. Like, I've heard he was stabbed. I've heard heart attack. I don't know, guys. I don't know, but it sucks. He was one of the legends. KK is a freaking legend. 939 deadlift in a meet with no belt. Like, that's ridiculous. Conventional too, so super impressive stuff. But yeah, knowing that he was a fan of me, I was a fan of his. It sucks to see that happen. Anytime these guys pass away when they're young, I hate it. When I hear about the bodybuilders passing away in their 20s and 30s, I'm just like, man, what are we doing to ourselves here? Not to say that we're doing the level of some of these guys, but it's like, you have to question it all to an extent. Number 6, tips for a first powerlifting meet from Arthur T. For a first powerlifting meet, you've heard all the stuff. Try to be conservative, go 9 for 9. Biggest thing I can throw out there that might be different from what other people would say is try to get your warm-ups done early before everybody else. You don't want to be rushing at the end to like warm up right before you have to go out on the platform, which you see all the time. People wait and they're literally rushing through their warm-ups because they're about to have to go out. You don't want to be that guy. So I prefer to get my warm-ups in really early. I'd rather get my warm-ups done and wait for 20 minutes than be rushing and have to like fight for racks and bars with everybody else. That's my biggest piece of advice that I think is useful. Trying to think of anything else off the top of my head. Another thing, a lot of guys don't realize, they overlook this. I would say you're better off just doing it. Wear wrist wraps on your deadlifts. So a lot of guys you'll see don't use wrist wraps on their deadlift, but what they don't realize is, let me get this off real quick. What they don't realize is wrist wraps are a grip advantage. So when I see people drop deadlifts in meets, and they're not using wrist wraps, I always think, if they'd had the wrist wraps on, it would secure them. Because if you do a really tight wrist wrap, it will basically keep your fingers almost closed. So your fingers are less able to open up, and it gives you a stronger grip. So that's another thing. If you're kind of struggling with grip, try that out. Get a really tight wrist wrap going, and it's completely legal for competition. It'll keep your hand almost like this, give you an advantage. So that's just another thing. Number 7, last question we'll do. Why don't you compete in knee wraps? I see a lot of top lifters switch back and forth, but I don't think I've ever seen you compete in them, from Nick Rogers. Cailer Woolham and I are one of the only two who we cannot stand knee wraps. We don't compete in knee wraps, and I don't think we have any desire to, based on what I've heard him say. So I did knee wraps one meet like 6 years ago, and I freaking hate knee wraps, the way they feel. Having to rely on someone to wrap me, having another stressor right before I go out on the platform. So I just don't have any interest in them. Although I will admit the knee wrap side of powerlifting, Raw Classic, is much more competitive than the Raw division, because there's simply way more people doing knee wraps than sleeves. as far as once you get to the enhanced side of the sport. So I'd say for like USPA, WRPF, these bigger meets, most people are using knee wraps. Whereas I think like IPF, USAPL, most people are using sleeves. But I just prefer sleeves. I feel it's more traditional, more classic, less help. And that's just what I like to do. So I'm never going to use wraps. I have no interest in that. And this is one thing I would say. My lifetime goal is pretty much the total 2204, 1,000 kilos in sleeves. And if I could do that, I'd honestly probably be hanging up. Like if I could do 2204, I'd call it a day. Pull 900 in a meet. But my life goals as far as powerlifting, 2204 total, 904 deadlift in a meet, 501 bench in a meet, Alice no, and 804 squat in a meet. If I could hit all those numbers, I'd be happy. That probably would be a wrap, but we'll see, guys. We'll see what happens. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. I did my last heavy pull before the meet yesterday. Smoked it, which you will see later on. And I'm not talking about the 777 that I put on Instagram. I did one after that, and it was a joke. So I'm just tapering and deloading till the meet now. Hopefully things go well. Appreciate it, guys. Thumbs up, subscribe. I'm out.